A picture I want to share with you, and I'll see who is up on their history and see who recognizes, who knows what this is. If you know what this is, raise your hand. Bree, what is that? It looks like Eden, huh? All right. Anybody know what that is? Oh, who said that? The bile dome. John, he knows everything. If it can be known, John Olden knows it. And he knows this too. This is the biosphere, to be exact. Biosphere 2. Anybody remember it? If you don't know what it is, you probably don't remember it. All right, the Biosphere 2 was built between 87 and 89. It was to be an enclosed ecological system where scientists would go in and run tests cut off from the rest of the world. And so back in 91, they ran the first 2-year cycle from 91 to 93, then a 6-month cycle in 94. And it included 4 men and 4 women, 8 people total. And these were scientists. These were brilliant people. They underwent psychological evaluations. They had to go through a very stringent screening test before they would be picked to live in there. They were briefed on how strenuous and how tough and how hard it would be. And they did everything they could to prepare these 8 people for life in the biodome for 2 years as they ran their experiments. And so they put them in there, they shut them off from the rest of the world, and they began to do their experiments, but something happened that no one expected and surprised the entire world. That within a few months of being in the biodome, 8 people broke off into 2 teams of 4. 4 members on each team because something happened to make somebody mad. And they split off to 2 teams of 4, 8 people in this biodome cut off from the rest of the world. And as they came to the end of their time in there, it got so bad, these 2 teams refused to even speak to each other. Ungrace in the biodome, splitting these people apart. Anybody remember Frank Reed? Frank Reed, history, Frank Reed? Frank Reed was taken captive in Beirut back in 86. He was held captive in Lebanon from 86 to 89. While there were other people who was taken captive with him, but there was one individual that he had a falling out with, and when he was finally released, he shared with everyone that he and this other prisoner could not stand each other. In fact, it got so bad they would not even talk to each other. Even worse than that, they were chained to each other, and they still didn't talk. Ungrace, breaking relationships between mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, hostages, scientists, prisoners, tribes, and races of people. And left alone, the cracks of ungrace begin to fissure, and it grows greater and greater, splitting us apart as people, as countries. And the only thing that can help this fracturing of ungrace is the thin, fragile bridge of forgiveness. It's like the poet, British-American poet W.H. Auden wrote, "I and the public know what all school children learn. Those to whom evil is done do evil in return." You know, he understands the law of nature is not a law of forgiveness. It's a dog-eat-dog world. It's the way it is in the animal world. You know, squirrels don't forgive cats for chasing them up trees, and dolphins don't forgive sharks for eating their playmates. You know, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and it's the same thing for us as human beings, our institutions, how we are together, financial, political. we all have this understanding, this unrelenting principle of unforgiveness. You know, an umpire, he calls a little guy out and he says, well, okay, I'm going to let you be safe because you're such a wonderful young man. Our nation crossed the borders of another nation and said, oh, forgive us. We were wrong. We made a mistake. Forgive us. We didn't mean to cross your borders. We take it back. We'll let you have the land back. The very thought of forgiveness in our world seems wrong. We go to great lengths to nurse our wounds, to rationalize our behavior, to punish others, to punish ourselves, all because we don't like this idea of forgiveness. So this morning, we're going to find out that if we are to have any hope as a people, as human beings of experiencing God's grace, we need to learn to do this first act of grace, which is forgiveness. And in our story this morning, we're going to find Jesus talking about God, about forgiveness, about unforgiveness. It begins with a man who experiences forgiveness. Matthew chapter 18, verse 21. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. You know, I wonder why Peter asked this question. I wonder what was going on in his life that out of the blue he just sort of asked Jesus this question about forgiveness. Because as I look at the scriptures here, there's nothing indicating leading up to it that there was any talk of forgiveness in any way, shape, or form about any subject. Chapter 17 of Matthew, it talks about the transfiguration, the healing of a boy with a demon, and the temple tax. Chapter 18 in Matthew, we find Jesus speaking about the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, the parable of the lost sheep, and how to deal with a brother who refuses to stop sinning. But I find nothing that hints of anything about forgiveness. You know, so I wonder if Peter is asking this question because there's something that Peter is dealing with in his life on a personal level. You know, I wonder if he's thinking about something in his life that someone has done wrong to him. Maybe a family member, maybe a loved one, maybe a friend. Someone has hurt him, insulted him, taken advantage of him, laughed at him, made fun of him, wronged him. But then they came and asked for forgiveness. And maybe Peter, maybe he's wondering if he should or could even forgive them. And maybe he's struggling in his life. Can he forgive this person who has hurt him? Or maybe on the other side of it, maybe Peter has wronged someone else. Maybe a friend, a family member, a loved one. Maybe they were counting on hot-headed Peter, counting on Peter to be there for them, counting on Peter to help them in a time of crisis, but Peter didn't show up again. Peter came to ask for forgiveness again, and they don't know if they can forgive Peter again. But whatever the reason, whatever Peter is dealing with in his soul, he comes to Jesus and asks, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times. Jesus says, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. And then Jesus begins to share a parable to bring his point home. It says, verse 23, therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And as he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. Now, 10,000 talents. I Googled that. All right, 10,000 talents is a lot of money. They figure each talent is worth 75 pounds of gold or silver back at that time, or 20 years of wages. So 10,000 talents would be roughly 200,000 years of work. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. Don't know the exact amount, but it's an amount that is so great it cannot be repaid. And so he comes to the king. And as he began the settlement, a man of 10,000 was brought to him. And since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. Now, we can sort of get behind this part of the parable. Now, notice, there's no dispute about the amount he owed. The king says it's this amount, 10,000 talents. He doesn't dispute that. The man agrees, okay, it's 10,000 talents. The king is old. The servant knows he's supposed to repay. Not an issue there. Not a problem. We all agreed that he must pay, and we all understand what it is to be this servant. Because all of us, at some point of our time, have owed somebody something. We've taken out loans to pay for school. We've taken out loans to pay for cars. We've taken out loans 30, 20, 30, 40 years to pay for our homes. All of us have either owed somebody, currently owe somebody, or will owe somebody money. And we understand how this system works. If we owe somebody the money and we agree to it and they agree to it and we don't pay it, guess what? We bear the consequences of not paying our debt, right? And the greater the debt and the greater the delinquency in paying the debt, the greater the penalty that the person will receive. And the penalty can be so great that homes are foreclosed on, families are evicted, and they are even taken to court. And for this servant, it is payday today. And the penalty seems horrific. Selling his wife, his children, all that he had to, just so he could pay the debt. I mean, that's way out there, but at least it fits with our sense of rightness and wrongness. You don't pay, you suffer the consequences. But what happens next blows up any sense of rightness and wrongness that we have as humanity. For it says, the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. See what's going on here? The servant asked that he just be patient, but the king gives him pity. The servant asked for a chance to repay his debt. The king cancels his debt. The servant is just trying to stay out of jail, but the king sets him free and lets him go. And do you hear the words of forgiveness? Pity, cancel debt, let go. These are the words of forgiveness. For in the word itself is the word give. And it means to give something to someone that they may not deserve or may not be entitled to. And forgiveness is as crazy for us, as maddening as a sense of grace. Forgiveness is often undeserved. But yet it is given. And its impact is amazing. And the king takes pity on him, cancels his debt, and lets him go. And here was a servant who has just experienced amazing forgiveness. But for some reason, the same servant is unable to give forgiveness to others. But we see that word, and it basically negates everything that has just gone before. All the good, everything that we had just witnessed and read about. But When that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. Google that. Roughly $4.28. $4.28. That's best guess. No one knows exactly. $4.28. But he owed him 100 denarii, and he grabbed him and began to choke him. "Pay back what you owe me," he demanded. And his fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, "Be patient with me and I will pay you back." But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay back the debt. Jesus doesn't dispute the man is owed this much money. But what Jesus does is compares this trivial, small, petty amount that is owed to him versus the great, enormous amount that he was forgiven by the king. You see, this king forgives him $1 million, but he does not realize what he should do with that. The king shows the servant pity, but it does not impact him. The king forgives his servant $1 million, but it does not change him. The king sets him free, but he does not care. He just does not understand that because he has first received forgiveness, he is to then live a life of forgiving others. So when he sees his fellow servant, and his fellow servant who owes him just $4, a little bit of change, falls on his knees and begs him, "Be patient with me and I'll pay you back," similar words that he used, he refuses, has him thrown in prison until he could pay the debt back. By Roman law, he had every right to do this. Every right. But Jesus compares this little amount to the great amount. You see, when we are forgiven, every time we experience forgiveness, it creates in us an opportunity to then go and be people who are forgiving. There's Professor Dr. Samuel Moffett, Harvard Seminary. He spoke, and one day he was speaking to students at Wheaton College. And he was also a missionary to China at one point in time. But while he was in China, years ago, the communists began to take over the country. And when they came in, they burned the missionaries' compound. They killed a number of Moffett's friends, and he and his family barely escaped with their lives. And for years, Moffett hated the communists. It consumed his life. It was almost immobilizing for him. Until he came to that moment in time, and he told the students, it was a pivotal moment for him when he realized that if he could not have forgiveness for the communists, he had no message to give at all. The gospel of grace begins with the message of forgiveness. That's why we sing songs, Amazing Grace, because there's a rule, I think, in the Bible. Grace is the only force in the universe powerful enough to break down the chains of ungrace. Say that with me. Grace is the only force in the universe powerful enough to break down the chains of ungrace. Grace alone conquers, demolishes, destroys ungrace. Here was a servant who had experienced grace and forgiveness, but it did not change him. It did not form his heart differently. And then he fails to show forgiveness to others. So in the end, he himself experiences the pain of unforgiveness. And when the other servants saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said. I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? In anger, his master turned him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. Notice, these are very different words. Before we heard the words pity, cancel debt, set free. Now we hear the words wicked servant, anger, jailers, tortured, payback. And then Jesus says, this is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother from your heart. Did you hear that? This is how God will treat us unless we choose to forgive our brother, our sister, our mother, our father, our son, our daughter, our grandmother, our grandfather, our friend, our boyfriend, girlfriend, teacher, colleague, assistant, and whoever else from our heart, no matter who it is, and no matter what they have done to us. That's the mystery of grace. It is by forgiving others and showing them grace that we open ourselves up to experience the grace and the forgiveness of God. Forgiveness or unforgiveness, grace or ungrace. The choice is ours. A couple of weeks back, our daughter Kirsten, you all know Kirsten, we had a not so good moment together. It was late in the evening, and nothing she did. It was all on me. But I was tired, and I had a hard day. And I said some things to her I should not have said. I've used the word snarky. Everybody knows what snarky means. I was snarky. But then the more I thought about it, the more that I realized that was not adequate to describe how I was in that moment. I think rude is a better word. I think harsh is a better word to describe. And it's always amazed me. It's always amazed me how we talk to those we love the most in ways that we would never talk to anyone else. And I went to bed that night. But when I got up the next morning, I took my quiet time, the time I set aside to be transformed, to let God do in my heart what needs to be done. And as I sat there with God and just let him speak to me, he told me what I needed to do. So the next time I saw my daughter Kirsten, I said, Kirsten, I'm sorry. What I said was totally wrong. It was uncalled for. Please forgive your daddy. I'm still learning about all this stuff about being like Jesus. Would you please forgive me? And will you please be patient with me? And she said she would. And in that moment, we had a healing of our relationship, of coming together, of grace, of forgiveness. the way Jesus means it to be. And so I've got a challenge for you this week. Man, we always have challenges. Put it out there for you. If there's someone you have wronged, and you know in your minds, if there's someone you have wronged, someone you have talked bad about, someone you have made fun of, someone you have treated rudely, someone you are not in a right relationship with, I dare you, I challenge you to go this week to that person, to be Jesus to them, and say to them, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. And if they will let you, give them a hug. Only if they'll let you. All right, only if they'll let you. Or maybe the challenge is for you that someone has done something wrong to you. And they've tried to make things right with you, but you have not been in the right mood, right frame of mind, right heart. My challenge to you is to go to them and say to them, I know you've been trying to make things right. Please forgive me. I forgive you. I want to be Jesus to bring us together. And if they will allow you, again, only if they'll allow you, to give them a big hug. Forgiveness or unforgiveness. Grace or ungrace. The choice is yours. Dear God, these parables are hard because they speak to me. They speak to us as human beings. Jesus pushes us and prods us and seeks to transform us and remake us and to mold us to be like him. But we cannot be the men we've been created to be. We cannot be the women we've been created to be without you. So, dear God, this morning, I pray, open our hearts to grace. Open our lives to forgiveness. Because we have been forgiven much, let us be people of forgiveness, people of grace, people who you have called to change this world. But we need you. We so desperately need you. Dear God, make us people of grace. Help us forgive and be Jesus to this world. And all God's people said, amen.